Thank you. Thank you, Durham. Can I start this afternoon by giving a little gift to the Durham Miners Association to go in the library, and the inscription on it says, "Thank you for all you do, your inspiration to so many, and your solidarity for all." It's a copy of "For the Many, Not the Few," for the Durham Miners Association. Thank you for that wonderful welcome, and thank you for your support for all the brilliant speakers we've had on the stage here this afternoon, because it's this assembly that gives us all hope and gives us all strength. So, the way you put in the political debate and the standards of debate and the subject of debate in Britain have changed completely in our direction because of your solidarity. I want also to pay a very personal and big heartfelt tribute to Davy Hopper and Davy Guy for all that they did over so many years for the Durham Miners Association and the mining communities all over the North East and indeed all over the country. They went through the horrors of the miners' strike, they went through the brutality of the miners' strike, they went through the political attack on the mining communities, and at the end of that they could have walked away and said, "God, that was awful, let's do something else with our lives." They said, "No, the Gala will carry on, the Gala will grow, the Gala will build on the strength of the mining communities, that all the other communities can learn from that. Unity is strength, solidarity is important, solidarity is vital." Davy Hopper's and Davy Guy's families are here today, and I express to them my warmth, my solidarity and my support. I was talking to Maria this morning, talking to others from the families today. We're never going to forget those two for all they did for our communities, because they inspired so much more to come from so many more. Thank you, Davy Hopper. Thank you, Davy Guy. When we march here, we enjoy the music, we enjoy the banners, and we enjoy understanding that solidarity that goes with it. This isn't just a festival, this is something very different. It's the biggest celebration of working class culture, of working class art, of working class music anywhere in Europe that's held today. And it shows that Durham teaches the whole world just what inspiration, just what ability, and just what creativity is there. They're born out of desperation, born out of struggle, born out of ambition, and above all, born out of pride. Pride in the communities and pride in the region. Those miners' banners show all the brutality and all the injustice that existed in the mining industry. From the inception of the mining industry onwards, the cruelty of the treatment of miners, the disregard for their lives, for their health, for their safety, the way in which children were put down the pits. And I'm wearing the badge of Keir Hardie today. He himself was a child worker in a pit. He went on to educate himself and, as Angela so brilliantly explained, was educated by the labour movement. Who says that somebody born in poverty can't achieve the greatest things if given the chance and given the opportunity? And the lessons we learn from that, the lessons we learn are that when we're in solidarity and support each other, we go forward as communities, we go forward and achieve things for everybody else. Those struggles in the mining communities, down the pits, in the general strike, eventually led to public ownership in 1947, and a whole new era of investment and safety in the mining industry. And then came the political attack on the industry by Margaret Thatcher and by the economics that she represented. I tell you what, never again must we go through a political attack on a community such as Thatcher mounted against the mining community. Never again must we accept the economics that leads to that kind of decision. But when I talk about changing the political debate, I put it to you in this way. There was a global financial crash in 2008-2009, brought about by unregulated banks, brought about by greed, brought about by tax havens, brought about by a subprime mortgage crisis that was so grievously brutal towards many of the poorest people in the United States. And it was then imported here through a policy, a political choice of imposing austerity on the people of this country, as was done in many other parts of Europe. There was nothing of an economic necessity about that decision. There was no need to do it. You don't cut your way to prosperity, you invest your way to prosperity. And so, in this general election campaign, we called time on austerity. We called time on the neocon economics that leads to austerity and the thinking around it. But let me just give you a few facts about the consequences of 7 years of austerity. The average chief executive officer of a FTSE 100 company, or indeed any other major company, earns now 187 times more than the average wage of somebody working in that organisation. That gap and that discrepancy has grown year on year. Year on year, it gets worse. No wonder they got so angry and so excited when, during the election campaign and before, I said we would use the power of public procurement to reduce the gap between the CEO and the average worker. And in modern Britain today, one of the wealthiest countries in the world, the 5th richest country in the world, 6 million of our fellow citizens, 6 million, are earning less than the living wage. Not right, not necessary. We will bring in a living wage of £10 an hour as per the TUC recommendation. And NHS workers, so quickly praised by every Tory minister whenever anything goes wrong, and I'm sure they're utterly charming to them whenever they go to the GP or to the hospital, have very generously taken a 14% cut in their wages in the past 7 years due to the public sector pay cap. And when the vote came in Parliament on the public sector pay cap, where were all those Tories and all their crocodile tears? Voting to keep the cap, voting to continue the suppression of public sector wages. And you'd have thought in a wealthy country like modern Britain, we could afford to ensure that all our children have a decent chance in life. No, there are 4 million children in modern Britain living in poverty, for whom their parents' prospect of a summer holiday from school is a nightmare, because no longer will they get access to a school breakfast or a school meal. It'll be holiday hunger for them because the school is closed and those meals are not available. Not necessary, not right, and in my view, fundamentally immoral in modern Britain. We've had 10 years of wages going down because of austerity. And the symptom, not the cause, the symptom of the housing crisis, and I'll come on to more of that in a moment, the symptom are those desperate people sleeping outside the main stations in every city, begging to survive or begging to get the money to go into a night shelter. Is anybody really happy at the idea that a few thousand people are forced to sleep on our streets every night because we as a society can't somehow or other get it together to provide housing for all of our citizens? And the use of food banks is up, and so many of our young people's ambitions are denied through their underachievement in school, often because of the poverty that they've grown up in and come from. None of this is right and none of this is necessary. And I tell you what, those on middle incomes, many of those doing relatively well in society, are also very unhappy in living in such a deeply unequal society where the only thing they can do is give help to food banks in order that the hungry can get something to eat. I don't want to live in a Britain of food banks. I want to live in a Britain where people are properly fed because they're paid the wages to be able to afford the food. And so I was very proud to lead our election campaign this summer. And the commentariat wrote us off. The broadsheet newspapers wrote us off. Most of the media wrote us off and said, well, put up a manifesto like that. Nobody's ever going to vote for anything like that. As if people like the idea that there is poverty, injustice, inequality, underfunded schools, underfunded hospitals, low pay in work, increasing disinvestment, as if people want that. No. We went out there. We went out there with a message of something very different. Under Labour, austerity would end. Under Labour, we would invest in the future. Under Labour, we would respect and bring communities together, not drive them apart. And so, what we unlocked in the campaign was not just the excitement of youth. It wasn't just the concerns of older people. It was this fundamental unease that a society can go on in this direction with poverty and inequality alongside rising, very rapidly rising, huge levels of individual wealth for a very small number of people. So what we were doing was saying there would be real security for older people, would be real security for older people through a national care service where they need it. All those with special needs or disabilities would get it. They wouldn't be penalised because they had dementia. We also offered hope to younger people that they're not going to be poorer than their parents' generation and their children won't be poorer than them. They're fed up with the story of the cascading of poverty from one generation to another, while the world becomes infinitely richer and the grotesque levels of wealth of the super rich gets greater and greater. Nobody's happy with that if they really think about it. And so we got that support because we were offering something very, very different. And I want to thank everybody that worked so hard in our campaign. Those that knocked on doors to identify votes, those that mobilised people to register to vote, and almost 2 million registered to vote before the election date was called or the cut-off date took place, those that campaigned in public rallies and meetings and events, and those that campaigned on social media, so that the conversation changed. The conversation changed into one about what you could do in a society, not what you couldn't or were not allowed or not able to do. We raised the whole question of real solidarity and what it means. But you know something? The Tories went into this election thinking it was going to be a walk in the park, and it became a walk in the dark and a nightmare for them by the end of it. But you know what? I'm not sure they've actually learnt very many lessons from it. I'm really not sure about that at all. Because they've done a deal with the DUP, which has cost them £1 billion, and as Len quite correctly says, the same levels of investment around the rest of the country would mean £50 billion being invested in all of the English regions. Money going into Scotland and money going into Wales. But no, they've got £1 billion to buy 10 votes in Parliament. They've got £1 billion for those 10 votes to stay in office, and they can't find a halfpenny or a penny for the health workers, education workers, or any other group in the public sector. And you know what? Their contempt for people standing up against injustice knows no bounds. There's a debate in Parliament the other day on the WASPy women who've been so brutally treated by the state pension system and so suffering as a result of it. And there was this debate in which many Labour colleagues put forward very strong and very good arguments about why there's a special deal needed for the WASPy women. And you know what the Tory MP, Tory minister replying said? It's quite important that these women understand the need to go back into the jobs market. We can offer them apprenticeships. What kind of insult to humanity is that? What kind of contempt is that for women who've worked very hard all their lives, paid into the system that they might get a pension when they retire, and the retirement date was arbitrarily changed and they suffered as a result of it. But I've got good news for the Tories. I know they're living through a nightmare at the moment. And I'm somebody, as you're very well aware, doesn't involve in himself in personal abuse and would never exploit somebody else's misfortune. And so I want to help these Tories out of their nightmare. Feel free at any time to resign and we'll have another general election. And in the general election campaign that's just been concluded, the Labour vote went up by 3 million, the biggest increase in the Labour vote at any time since before I was born. Indeed, the biggest since 1945. And that didn't happen because of the kindness of the press barons. It happened because of the decency and generosity of ordinary people all across this country who saw the need to do things differently and better. And so our campaign will be out there all this summer. We'll be out there campaigning in every one of the 73 marginal seats we intend to gain in that general election, so that we populate Parliament with Labour MPs committed to carrying out the changes needed. But we also endorse, work with and enjoy the strength, the solidarity and the support of trade unions, of community organisations and of people altogether. Parliament alone will not change this society. It's what we all do in our daily lives and in our campaigns that is so important. I want to say a particular welcome to the new MPs that have been elected for the North East region in the general election. I'm joined on the platform here by at least 20 colleagues from the Parliamentary Labour Party, and of those that have been re-elected, all of them with vastly increased majorities, I say welcome back and well done. One person I really want to welcome back because he's such a dear friend and such an inspiration to all of us is my great friend Dennis Skinner. And Dennis is the embodiment of working class decency, respect and humanity and determination to always represent those that have put him into Parliament in the first place. Newly elected MPs for the region, Liz Twist in Blaydon, Laura Pidcock, Paul Williams, Mike Hill, and joined here today on the platform from other regions. Can I say a big welcome to Hugh Gaffney from Coatbridge, Stephanie Peacock from Barnsley, Marcia de Cordovo from Battersea, the seat everybody said we couldn't win and we did. Well done, Marcia. And to somebody who just crept in with a tiny majority of only 32,000, Dent Carden from Liverpool Walton. I want to pay tribute and acknowledge John Cummings, who died earlier this year, former Labour MP and miner, great friend, great supporter of the mining community. Always remember those that have gone before, and remember the pain their families go through for years and years afterwards. That's what makes us strong and together as a community. And I want to say a particular thank you to all of those that helped with the organisation of the general election campaign in so many ways, both at local and national level. Two people played, to me, a particularly crucial role in that, and that was Andrew Gwynn and Ian Lavery in coordinating our campaign. And Ian Lavery has now taken on the job of party chair in order to prepare for the next election. Ian, Andrew, thank you for all you do. Where are you, Ian? Those challenges are for us all now. The challenges of what we do to challenge austerity, the challenge of the lessons we learn from the mining communities and so many others. There are injustices that have been done and injustices that have been challenged. And I know how hard it is to fight through to change a judicial decision that is wrong, or to get an inquiry into misbehaviour and misdemeanours by those in power and those in office. I've been through campaigns on Guildford and Birmingham and other injustices, and I know how hard it is. I want to pay a tribute to all those Hillsborough families that worked so hard with such determination for so long to finally get their justice. But I've been talking to our shadow teams, all of our shadow teams, on what policies we will develop when we go into government. And it's very, very clear to me that the first decision that must be made by Diane Abbott when she becomes Home Secretary is to order a public inquiry into Orgreave and a public inquiry into Shrewsbury. And we will do that. Matt spoke brilliantly about the way the firefighters responded to the Grenfell Tower fire. I was there with him the next day, and words are hard to find when you're talking to firefighters who ran into a burning building when they were told not to, borrowed policemen's riot shields in order to stop burning debris falling on them as they ran into that building, knowing full well they might not come out of it. Brave beyond belief. And I was talking to them with Matt, and I said to one of them, Matt will remember this very well, I said to him, why did you do it when you knew how dangerous it was? He said, well, there's a chance of saving a life. We will go in and save that life. That is what we do as firefighters. But what Grenfell also showed us was the crisis of housing across the whole country. A towering inferno of poor people being burnt to death in a dangerous building in the richest borough in the United Kingdom. Full praise to the firefighters, the ambulance workers, the paramedics, the police, the community volunteers who rushed to the scene to try and do their best to help out. But what is it about modern Britain that the ability to rehouse 400 people suddenly becomes a national catastrophe that has to be dealt with by central government, because we so cut back on public services, cut back on local government, cut back on social housing provision, sold off so much council housing and so many opportunities for so many people. So the lessons of Grenfell are, of course, to make our buildings safe, but they're also to properly fund fire inspections, building control inspections, planning inspectors, properly fund fire safety measures, and invest in decent quality housing for all. Too many of our children are growing up in grossly overcrowded private rented flats where it's hard to do their homework. They don't know if they're going to be there in 6 months' time. They might have to move school. Their life chances are being damaged as very small children because of their housing insecurity. A Labour government will invest not in luxury homes in the London suburbs. We'll be investing in good quality housing for the people that need good quality housing all over the country. But the election was about healthcare, it was about investment in our NHS and ending the dicing up, slicing up, cutting up and privatising of our NHS. It's the most precious national institution we have. We will invest in our NHS, not cut it, not damage it, not charge for it and not destroy it. But it's also about the future generation. In every child there is hope, in every child there is ambition, in every child there is creativity. Bring our children together in the very youngest years, because so much of what happens long before they get to school is so important. So we will give at least 30 hours per week free opportunities for all preschool children to come together, to play centres, to preschool, to children's centres, so that that sure start that we were so proud of in the past will become a reality for all of our children. And we want to properly fund our schools, our primary schools, so that when the children go there, they're not in oversized classes, they're not in supersized classes, they don't have a head teacher who is so stressed because they haven't got the money to run the school properly. They're spending their time on fundraising when they should be spending their time on teaching. We will invest in schools, in education for all of our children. And it's about all people that work in a school, the head teacher, the teachers, and the crucial work done by the vital work of teaching assistants, support staff, and all the others. They deserve that justice as well. And to ensure that hungry children are fed and that all children eat a meal together, we will invest the money. It's been criticised by many. I'm very proud of the proposal we're putting forward, and I'll be even prouder to carry it out. That is a free school meal every day for every primary school child, eating it together. And our children must be equipped with the skills they need, the construction toys, the science, the maths, the English, and all the things they need to learn in school. Those are absolutely vital for the future of all of us. But it's also about unleashing the creativity in all of our children. So I'm also very proud of the part of our manifesto that said we would have a pupil arts premium, that every child can learn a musical instrument in school and every child can take part in that creativity. But it's also about what young people want to achieve in life and society. If a young person wants to be an electrician, wants to be a plumber, wants to be an architect, wants to be a scientist, then it's up to all of us to help them down that road. If we charge fees to go to college, what happens? The debt builds up, the students drop out. What happens if you charge £9,000 a year to go to university and leave with a £50,000 debt? People can't cope with the stress, can't cope with the debt, they drop out, and that debt still stays with them till they reach retirement age. Well, other countries do it differently. They value education, and they value adult education as well, that we might go back to college later in life to learn something different, learn a new skill, or want to explore new ideas. And again, I was heavily criticised for this, and we were as a party, the costs of doing it. Personally, I'm quite prepared to bear those costs and quite prepared to do it. So, we would, yes, tax to do it. We would increase corporation tax. We would increase tax at the top end of the scale. And to misquote what a Tory MP once said about mass unemployment during the Thatcher years, when he said it was a price worth paying, I say the tax price to educate all our young people is a price well worth paying. And so, that's the offer we make of a Britain that will work for the many, not the few. That our railways will be run by the public for the benefit of the public who've invested in them already. That our postal service will be run by the public for the public who've already invested in it. That our water services, instead of creaming off their profits to put in tax havens elsewhere, would be publicly run so the profits go in to investing in conservation measures and supporting a decent water system for the whole country. And that energy systems could be run by local communities and local authorities with more sustainable energy usage and generation for all. All these things are possible if you have a government that's prepared to think differently to those that have gone before. I'll finish on this. In Hamburg today, the G20 are meeting. Theresa May is apparently having a chat with Donald Trump. I can't really imagine what's going on in that meeting. And somebody asked me today, what would you be saying if you're meeting Donald Trump today? I said, well, there's a couple of things I want to say to Donald Trump. Well, more than two, actually, but I'd start with these two. The first one is, we live on one planet. We inherit a planet from those that went before. It's not ours to destroy. It's not ours to pollute. It's not ours to damage. It's ours to protect and preserve. So don't walk away from the achievement of the Paris Climate Change Accord. Walk towards it, that we all might live in a safer planet in the future. And I suspect that our Prime Minister might also be talking about some special trade deal with the United States in the future, which I suspect will look awfully like the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership. I'll tell you this, a Labour government wouldn't be signing up to any trade treaty that imported bad working conditions, exported unemployment, and brought poorer quality, worse conditions to our shelves, our marketplaces and our homes. We would be promoting trade that increases job protection, increases job security, improves the products and the safety we all have, and has a human rights clause attached to it too, so that we don't condone human rights abuses under the guise of free trade around the world. And we would be calling time on the Thatcher-Reagan legacy, the Thatcher-Reagan legacy of redistribution of wealth for the wealthiest at the expense of the poorest. Let the free market rip and let the rest go to hell. The poorest and most vulnerable in so many parts of the world have already paid that price. It's not right for them, it's not right for us, it's not necessary. It does require a different vision of a different world. A world where you work to reduce the differences, not increase them. Where you don't go to war at the drop of a hat. Instead, you have a foreign policy based on peace, democracy, justice and human rights. And you recognise those poor people who are refugees around the world, never asked to be refugees. They're the product of environmental disasters, they're the product of wars, they're the product of human rights abuses. And you know what? They've also all got ideas and ambition. They also all want to contribute to all the other things in our society. Can I finish? Would you mind, please? And can I conclude with this? Can I conclude with this, please? Can you leave it for a minute, please? Can I just conclude with this? No. Can I just conclude with this thought? If we want that world where we respect those rights of people, yes, I am, but can I finish my speech first, please? Can you leave it, please? Thank you. No, thank you. Everybody else wants to say something. Everybody else wants to say something. Please stop. Please stop. I'll talk to you in a minute, all right? I'll talk to you in a moment, all right? No, just hang on. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'll talk to you in a moment. Okay. If somebody wants to have a chat with me about a couple of things, I'm very happy to do that in a moment. I do talk to everybody. I just finished with this. I was some years ago, I was at a refugee camp in Syria, and I was talking to people stuck on no man's land between the Iraq and Syrian border. This was before the war reached its extremities in Syria. And this family were living in a tent, getting a bit of food and trying to get by, but some of them had died in fires in the tent in a very cold winter. Their lives were pretty desperate. They were in a pretty desperate situation. And this young girl was sitting on the floor of the tent. She'd be about 12, 13, something like that. And I was talking to her through an interpreter, and I said, "What's your ambition? What do you want to achieve in life?" And you know what she said to me? "I want to be a doctor." Her determination, her belief in herself, her belief in her community, those beliefs and those determinations are universal. It's a human spirit and a human condition that we always reach out for others and try and achieve for others. So the message we give today from Durham at this fantastic gala today is that united we can achieve so much. United we can change the face of this country. United we can give real hope and opportunities to young people here and help those around the world that also need those rights and that hope and that opportunity. It's our strength and our solidarity that can achieve so many of these things. And those that write and think so much, and poetry around the world can also tell us quite a lot. And I want to finish with this quote from John Cornford. John Cornford was a young British person in Spain during the Spanish Civil War. John Cornford died 50 years ago this week. 50 years ago this week, he died, killed by fascists in Spain while he was doing his best for justice and for liberty. And his words are these: "And history forming is in our hands, not plasticine, but roaring sands. Yet we must swing to its final course. We are the future. The last fight let us face." John Cornford, 1937, in Spain. Durham, thank you very much. Durham, stay together. Durham, in solidarity. Thank you.
Right, I'll call upon the chairman of the Durham Mines Association to give a brief vote of thanks. Thank you very much.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, wasn't that extraordinary? The Durham Miners Gala hasn't seen a leader of the Labour Party like this since Clement Attlee addressed it in 1947, 70 years ago. That year